Pathways to Possibility. Dr. Christopher J. Withers takes us inside the real work of changing lives through education. From boosting college enrollment by double digits to coaching incarcerated and adult learners, he unpacks how access, strategy, and heart come together to open doors for students who've been overlooked or underestimated. This episode blends honest conversation, practical wisdom, and inspiring stories from classrooms, prisons, and campuses across North Carolina, offering a roadmap for anyone who believes education can still transform lives and community. Dr. Christopher J. Withers, let's chop it up.
Absolutely.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Mr. Williams. How are you? I hope all is well, and I hope you had a blessed and prosperous holidays and Christmas.
Yes. All is well. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here with us, and we are grateful for that. So let's dive into this. Who is Dr. Christopher J. Withers?
I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. Grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, went to West Mecklenburg High School. And so getting straight to the point, education was not necessarily forced, suggested on us. And so my dad was in the military. And so he didn't want me to go to the military. So he sent me and my sister to college. And so along the way, went to St. Augustine's University, and who I am, I met my wife she went to NC State. And then we live right here in Roseville. That's right. Go Pack. And then I always tell people, you mix St. Augustine's University and North Carolina State, you get North Carolina A&T. And so I bring my wife, my daughter up because that's who I am. So, and of course, avid cyclist. That's why I met you along the way years ago. And it's been a long time right now. And so I believe in my faith, I believe in community, and I believe in people. So to unpack your question, that's who I am. Absolutely.
Around a lot, or did you guys settle in Charlotte, or how did that work for you?
So settled in Charlotte. It's interesting. My family is originally from Charlotte, but my mother grew up in South Carolina. And of course, my father grew up in Charlotte. And so they met in Charlotte. They both went to Central Piedmont, went to West Charlotte High School. Legendary West Charlotte High School. And so they met, and then here we are. And so my dad was in Vietnam. And so again, growing up, he said that, hey, military is not what you think it is. Had I not gone to college, I probably wouldn't went into the military, preferably the Air Force. But my dad wanted me to go in another direction, and it worked out. And, up until he passed away, he never talked about Vietnam up until, he passed away, and he talked about the things that he went through there. And so he always said that, the military is a good tool, but it's not for everybody. You have to be disciplined. And so he wanted more for me. And so hence, this is where I am now.
That's interesting. I got a lot of offers to go to military academies, and I wanted to be special forces, but I wanted to be an airplane pilot. And I actually went through the process to go to the Air Force Academy. And, you go through all your checks and things like that. And when they checked my vision, I didn't have 3-dimensional vision. I couldn't see properly. And you have to have correct vision to be a pilot. And I couldn't be a pilot. So that really discouraged me from doing that. And so other than being a doctor, I wanted to be special forces. I wanted to be an airplane pilot. And so that is a curious fact about me that you probably didn't know.
Well, I think for those of us who wanted to do things in life, I came close to going to the military because through my college journey wasn't straight through, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of punched out. I actually went to the Air Force office. And so, I was almost at that point, but then I decided to go back and, finish my degree, and it worked out. So absolutely, I understand your point. But sometimes, life gives us that journey to look at this path or look at this path for, life is good when you have options and you make your choice, right? So that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I like the dialogue that we're having. I always leave space for our listeners to get to know and be a part of our conversation. I wanted to ask you, if you could poll your closest friends, how would they describe you? What would they say about you?
Number one, I'll be dedicated. And what I mean by that, dedicated to family, dedicated to friendship, dedicated to life. Trustworthiness, you can trust me. Very personable, and knowing you. The thing about management, and right now I'm taking a certification at Michigan State in leadership. And one of the things that popped up was that, and supervisors forget this, presidents forget this, CEOs forget, you have to know who your people are.
That's
you have to understand what makes them tick. And so a lot of my friends, they understand that I know who they are. And I'll open myself up for them to know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Not holding up any walls, not holding on into any barriers. And so I think that's important.
No pretension.
That's right. That's right.
No, you're not a pretentious person. You wear a lot of hats, Chris. I mean, you coach. You are very involved in the community as far as the adult educational piece. You're a mentor. You're a leader. Which one of those things you identify with the most?
I think that right now in my life is coaching. Going into the prison, part of what I do is help those young men receive their GEDs. And so, you have very young men in there who made wrong choices, and now they understand what they did was wrong. And so now they're trying to get their GEDs and trying to get their degrees. And so it's up to me to coach them. And it's like I told them one day, I'm more of a project manager and a coach more than a teacher and instructor. What does that mean? Well, I have to set up the right environment for you to learn. For an example, we had to get new televisions in the particular space that I'm teaching at, computers, laptops, because I wanted to present in a way to where we're dealing with older adults. So the typical instruction is not going to be conducive to them. So how do I do what I do? Project management. And then coaching, meaning that even though you made this mistake, that doesn't stop you from learning. That doesn't stop you from succeeding, because my goal is to make sure that once you get out, you do not come back in here. And for those of you who are serving life sentences, well, that doesn't mean that you stop learning. That doesn't mean that you stop living. And so coaching individuals, coaching adults to reach that goal is my responsibility. And of course, if you're in higher education, I tell administrators all the time, it's a transformational process. Our process is to transform individuals. So forget your career. I get the fact that we all have to make money until we hit the lottery. It's good. But our focus is to transform individuals and to make them better. And that's our responsibility.
I like what coaching, you said. I mean, you are not defined by your current situation or your past situation. It's all about projecting where you're going to be. And, when you're looking out into the landscape, Dr. Withers, it seems there is an assault on education. And if some of our younger brothers and sisters or people listening to you today, and you've been an educator, stress the importance of where education can take you and the different kinds of education, because it may not necessarily mean a university or a degree, but whatever education that you encompass into your life, turn that into something positive for you.
Absolutely. So education comes in different forms. So for me, again, we're talking about options in life. I thought that I was going to go into logistics. So I drove 18-wheelers for Pepsi. I drove earth movers and all of those things for Stock Building Supply. Got my Class A license through that process. So my point that I'm making is that if you want to be in logistics, you can go to truck driving school. You can go to you get your associate's degree, get your certifications. That's what the community colleges do. Better than four-year institutions. They provide you more options to give you a pathway to go to. And so you as an individual have to figure out what it is that you want to do. A, dedicate yourself. B, be willing to make mistakes. And C, respond to your mistakes in that growth period. Meaning that realize what you did wrong, take that step back, move forward. And then last but not least, understand your resources around you. That could be tutors at the institution. That could be career services managers, whoever they are that have your best interests. Use those resources. And so all of that encompasses your educational purpose and your educational journey.
Yeah, you got to know your why. And to circle back to education, you and I are professional men, and and we're in the you're in the education system and has also been in the professional world outside of education. in the outside world of education. But why is it that the very institution, because education is a pillar of our foundation, does that get the least respect, the least amount of pay? For our younger listeners who may want to go to college to be an educator and kind of saying, man, I can't make it and survive if I go to school to try to be a teacher, is almost like we're putting less emphasis on the very thing that breeds a Dr. Chris Withers or produced a Tony Williams or whomever it might be. It started with the educator. What is it about that system that even today still get the least amount of pay, the least acknowledgement, and how does that affect people wanting to go into that?
Good question. I'm going to answer that in different ways. Number one, we're going into the world now to where AI is prevalent. And I'm bringing that up because one of the classes that I teach at Wade Tech is AI. And so it's interesting in Charlotte, North Carolina, they're building a school that has no teachers. AI.
Wow.
And so the reason why I'm bringing that up is the fact that educators, we have to build an atmosphere in which we're recruiting more educators behind us. Now, there are several layers to the education field. You may have your elementary teacher. You may have your junior high school teacher. You may have your high school teacher. Then you may have your administrators on that level, high school principal things, associate principal assistant. Then you have higher education. For me, I fell into it. Number two is something that very few people, I don't know statistics on who wants to be a high school educator or a higher education educator, but it's something that you just don't go to college and think about. Me, I fell into it. So my point is we have to really show what being a higher education administrator can do and how you can benefit from it. I think that as far as pay is concerned, there are some people that who are doing fairly well in higher education. There are some that do fairly well as administrators, but everybody doesn't get to that level. Everybody doesn't strive to get to that level. So for an example, you have a lot of teachers who teach on the high school level, junior high school level, who are brilliant at what they do. They're passionate about what they do. They really care about the students. They have to be compensated for that. Like cities in like Detroit, places like that, those teachers are unionized, so they get paid more. But the structure and responsibility is different, right? And so I think for me personally, people on my teams that I never lost not one person on my team, but number two, a lot of them are still in higher education. Some have left admissions, have gone into financial aid. Some have worked at North Carolina State. Some still work at HBCU. So it is my responsibility to ensure that those individuals stay in the field and grow, because they're coming behind me. So to answer your question, it is our responsibility to tell people and to show people that, hey, this is the road that that you can go on to become an administrator. These are the benefits. And then also I take it a step further. That's something that is not popular amongst people, but I'm going to say it. Just because you become a vice president or president doesn't mean that you get brand new and stop networking with people.
That's right.
And so we owe it to individuals to bring them up and show them the same things, right, that we have learned, bestow them the same knowledge that we have. And for some reason, a lot of people stop doing that. I can tell you personally, when I was going through my journey recently, as far as going through my career change, I look back, try to communicate with the people that I knew, it was crickets. So I promise, I said once, I told that rope, once I get back on my journey, that I will never do anybody like that again. Never do anybody like that. Everybody that has called me, I've opened up the door for them and turned them on to different people. So my point is that those are the avenues that we need to take to make this field a little bit more robust, to bring new talent in and to continue to grow. And that's my answer is going to be preferably geared towards historically Black colleges. Because now, again, like you said, going up under assault, there are a lot of private institutions, whether they be PWIs or HBCUs, who are shutting down. But preferably HBCUs, we have to change our mindset so we can grow. And part of that is developing relationships, is nurturing, but then also collaboration with other individuals within our community.
Relationships are very important. Mentorship is extremely important. I like what you said. You mentioned a couple of times that you fell into it. I'm laughing on the inside because it's almost like a calling. And sometimes it will find you. I mean, you have completed a doctor of education. You have a master's in public administration, organizational management, and it seems like it found you. And now you are in that calling. And when you talked about reaching back for others and having that feeling that you felt that wouldn't necessarily happen to you, that's the sign. It's a book or a poem called A Measure of a Man, and that epitomizes how men, black men in particular, should behave. And I notice even in my career how oftentimes we will achieve a certain status and level, and at risk of losing that, we do not provide the mentorship. We do not provide the looking back and helping, because feel like we're at risk of perhaps losing what we have if too much attention is placed on Chris is helping too many people. That could be a potential problem. We're very tribal over our success. And so when you look at your deeper why, you fell into education, but there is a deeper why for you now. Can you explain that, what that is for you?
So when I was in enrollment management, and it's something I learned, several things I learned about myself through the journey. Number one, my wife told me one day, she said, you have high expectations. And I didn't understand about myself is that I had expectations. I expect people to do the things that I would do based on a relationship and the goodness of what I intend to do. Everybody's not like that. Number two, when I first came a director of admissions, people said, well, you'll be a good president. And so the purpose of me to go back and work on my doctorate was to create a space to where I could learn and grow and become, learn how to be a college president, because those are steps, right? And I was on that path. But along the way, sometimes you may take a position, the position looks good. But when you get in that space, you find out that everybody is not about your growth and nourishment, and it becomes toxic. And so what I had to learn was that no matter how dedicated you are, no matter how hardworking you are, if you're not with the right people, you can't grow.
That's right.
And so you need to get with the right people. So my calling right now, and I think the journey that I have been going on recently, is finding the right people to be around so that I can still grow. Even at the age of 52, I'm still growing. We're all still growing.
That's right.
But it has to be, you have to get to a point to where you're with the right people. The right people are giving you the ability to work your talent, to work your strengths, do what you're willing to do what you need to do, and then they nurture that space for you. The relationships build, and then you start growing. And so that's the space that I'm in right now. That's the space that I have been looking for. And by the grace of God, I'm on that space. Sometimes when you try to get somewhere, it's not just a straight path.
That's right.
Some people it may be, they fall into that space, but then some people it may be, you might take a right, you might take a left, but ultimately you get right back to where you wanted to be. And that's life. And so that's what has happened to me. So I do think that's my calling. I do think that that's my space. And so I'm continuing to work towards that. Absolutely.
Well, you're moving forward. And I like what you said about, you may not be on the path, you may be left or right of the path, or you may be zigzagging, but you're still moving forward, and you didn't say turning around and going back.
That's right, because you cannot go back.
And before you go back, you just stand still.
That's right.
And so I love that. So now you're at Lewisburg College, my hometown. Didn't know if you knew that. Grew up there in Lewisburg. And so you're there doing amazing things. Can you tell us a little bit about Lewisburg College and how that can be an option for some students in the area, and maybe for some of our listeners? Lewisburg College is a viable option.
Yeah, it is. And so my journey, and if you didn't know, I was at Lewisburg College. To answer your question, Lewisburg College is the oldest two-year college in the country.
It sure is.
It's the oldest two-year college in the country. And if you don't know, it is known academically as well as sports. What I mean by that, Lewisburg College has a small environment to where if you're a student And if you don't know what it is that you would like to do, you can go to Lewisburg College outside of a community college and get your associate's degree and really understand who you are and what it is that you like to do. That is an environment and a structure in which students really can understand, again, who they are, where they would like to go. It is one of the only two-year colleges. It is the only two-year college in the state of North Carolina that has dormitories on that campus. And so what happens is that you get the best of both worlds. You get the world of understanding what a four-year institution is, right? But then also you get the best of both worlds to, from an academic standpoint, to infuse yourself in the beginning stages, right, of your academic journey. And so it is a beautiful gym located not even an hour away from Raleigh, no more than about 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes right down the road. So absolutely. But then also athletically, for an example, a lot of guys that I recruited there and a lot of young men that I got to know, they didn't want to go to a four-year institution. They were strictly about baseball. Well, it's an environment in which you can dedicate yourself to your academics first, but then number two, dedicate yourself to your craft. What is that craft? It could be baseball. It could be football. And so a lot of them had intentions on going pro, which I feel like that was a good idea. Don't waste your time and money. If you know that college is not for you, if you want to focus on going professional, please do as such. There were a lot of young men outside of that who did go on to four-year institutions. But then there were a lot of young men also that played basketball, who got their associate's degree, and now they're productive men in society. There were a lot of football players who came through there that were successful. Some of them are playing in NFL. And so Lewisburg College was a blessing to me to go there. We did increase enrollment, but along the way, we met a lot of people, met a lot of students, met a lot of alumni who were really passionate about Lewisburg College. So if you don't know, look Lewisburg College up, and it's only about 30, like I said, no more than 25, 30 minutes right outside of Raleigh. It's one of the best jewels here in North Carolina. Absolutely.
Well, Chris, how do you balance the pressure? You mentioned you were in enrollment and these types of things. How do you balance that pressure of who fits, who's ready? Because you can impact a potential success of a person through enrollment, letting them in or they're being denied. How do you balance that pressure with that?
That is a good question. In being a dean, in being a director of admissions, our responsibility was first and foremost enrollment. Okay. But in that space, what I taught my teams and what I understood was that you have to get to know the student. What does that mean? One of the good things the HBCUs are known for is that they understand what a student is coming from and where they're going. So I've been blessed enough to where I traveled the world. I traveled all across this country. It's only 4 states that I haven't been into here in the United States. I've traveled all but 4 recruiting. That consists of me going into somebody's home, meeting the family, understanding their culture, understanding their backgrounds. That consisted of me of going into the community, and the whole community supports that one student. But my point is, you have to understand the student, understand their background, understand their academic limitations. What does that mean? They may not be good test takers. They may not be good writers, whatever those limitations are. So as a director, I quickly learned, or as the dean, I quickly learned that it's more than numbers and statistics. It's about recruiting a student, giving someone an opportunity. They wouldn't ordinarily get that opportunity. And then number 3, even though I recruited a class, even though I recruited that student, my office is still open to where you can come in my office and still have that conversation, right? And so that is so critical. Those are the 3 things that I've learned in the spaces that I've had. And in some cases, yes, I had disagreements with management about, presidents about, well, it's numbers. They quickly understood that as, for example, if they lost students, they quickly understood that, hey, we got to go back to what Dr. Withers was saying and develop relationships with these individuals so they would stay.
That's right.
Because the one thing that I did not want my teams to do is for an example, we bring in a class of, at St. Augustine's University, for an example, we bring in a class of 500 students. Okay.
Mhm.
Statistically, it doesn't make sense to lose 100 because then my team will have to go right back and do double work to replace that 100 on top of the 500 that we have to bring in. And so my point is that some people quickly learn that it's a joint effort. It's a cross campus effort, right? And when you send your son or daughter to HBCU, that's the same environment that they're going to be in. So that's the same treatment that you want to get. Historically Black colleges, we understand that it's a family that helps the student matriculate on to graduation. So we all take pride in the student. We all have a footprint with this student. So absolutely, that's how I will answer that question.
Yeah.
It is something my first stint at management, when I first became the director of St. Augustine University, I quickly understood that. And dealing with the stress of it all, I had to understand that I could not do everything by myself.
Yep.
So I had a team. I quickly learned how to delegate. I quickly learned how to collaborate. I quickly understood who could I rely on to across campus. Who could I trust, right? Because part of that trust is my success.
That's right.
Part of my success is everybody's success. But again, going to a previous point that I made earlier, what I had to understand the hard way is that no matter what I did, right, no matter what ethical practices that I did, if the people around me aren't ethical or towing in the same boat, then it becomes problematic.
That's right.
So, career-wise, recently, that's kind of how I winded up in the teaching and doing what I had to do, doing what I'm doing right now. I said, Lord, let me switch gears a little bit because this is not satisfying me anymore. What is it that I can do that's going to be impactful? And then when I took the step, and when I got the opportunity to go into the prison and to go to Wake Tech, and I'm teaching multiple classes at Wake Tech, and I'm dealing with retention at Halifax Community College, I'm truly working my blessing and my talent. I'm happy with what I'm doing, but I'm still working to get further to where I am, because at the end of the day, not too many educators are going to go into that prison and teach men. They're not going to do it.
Let's talk a little bit about that. The Bible says the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, right?
Absolutely.
And then it says, acknowledge him in all thy ways and he shall direct thy path. And it seems like he placed that stop sign in your situation to divert you to another way. I like what you was talking about, culture and knowing people. And, a lot of times we look at a lot of data. Data's important, but data doesn't necessarily tell the story. Like you said, some kids don't test well. There's other factors that is not a reflection on their capacity to learn. I think about my, when I first got to NC State at that time back, in our day, every freshman had to have a mentor. And my mentor was, one of my friends on the football team. I won't call his name, but at that time, remember we had Prop 48. And so that's, you get in with the lower scores if you're an athlete and all those kinds of things, because they want you to play. So my mentor was a Prop 48 guy. And initially, when you think Prop 48, you think they're not as smart. They just here because they play football. But he was so determined, and me and him used to talk all the time. He said, look, man, he said, I'm not Prop 48 because I don't have the capacity to learn. He said, I was a star football player and I ain't have to do that. Right. But then when he got to college, he changed and he saw the real picture. And fast forward, not only was he on the football team, but he became academic All-American, and now he's a doctor. And but he started out as a Prop 48 kid. And so to your point, if you're just looking at the data, you don't want those kids hitting your numbers and bringing your numbers down. But Dr. Withers would look at the entire picture. Dr. Withers would look at the culture and look at that he was an athlete and always pampered, and he didn't have to apply himself, not that he couldn't. And so I love that. And so to pivot where you are now in the prison system, now we're kind of crossing over into angel work. And so many of my guests are doctors or physicians or people that give back. And I tell them that those are angel careers. Those are careers that are selfless. And this act that you're doing, number one, being an educator is an angel job. And being in the prison, how did that come about? And how is that filling up your cup by doing that?
When I was going through my journey, I got a phone call. Dr. Harris said, "Wait, Ted called me." And just the other day, I told her how much I appreciated her, and how much that I'm willing to do for this process. And so she called, and so said, "I want to give you an interview." And mind you, I had been on the operations end for a very long time. I had not been on the curriculum end, what we call curriculum development.
Mm-hmm.
And so she says, "When I call you back, the Zoom call, never forget it." She said, "We're going to do an interview and I want you to set up a curriculum, as though you're in a prison." I said, "What?"
Mm-hmm.
So going back to questions about friends. So some friends of mine, that's what they do. So I called them up and said, "Man, here's the situation." They showed me one, gave me a presentation about what he did in the classroom. I said, they taught me through it.
Yeah.
Well, I said, "Lord, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?"
Mm-hmm.
Because prior to that, I'd probably been through like 50, 60 interviews. And I said, well, I want to do something different. The what is, I don't know, but I don't know if I'm going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So she calls me back. So I set up a curriculum. In my mind, she gave me the subject matter, and a friend about it said, just let it float. He said, "You had the gift of speaking and to relating to people. Just relate to her, set it up the way you can relate to them in prison, and then go from there." And the rest is history. So I surely did. And so I say, I went through the first semester and I was like, wow. I had this envision in my mind about how prison was and about how I was going to work all this stuff out. And I'm laughing and smiling because it tapped into my memory and I reflected. So I went in there and I said, well, first of all, you have to do an extensive background check. And so now I have a background check. I can go in any prison and teach through my background check. So start off with 7 guys. And so I said, well, what do you need help in? They said, well, math. And I'm not strong in math.
Huh? Yeah.
So I went back to my daughter. She's very good at math. She said, well, Dad, this is what you need to do. My teacher, my sister is a math teacher in Greensboro. And so she was coaching me. This is what you need to do. But through that journey, I found out that it's not necessarily teaching them, but it's energizing them and showing them another way that they can get this done. Because a lot of them are very brilliant already. They just needed somebody to get that spark back. They needed somebody to create that atmosphere to where they could learn. They needed somebody to have that conversation with them, to talk about life, to talk about the things that they've done right, the things that they've done wrong. And so I took it, I ran with it. And then somebody walked up to me and said, well, we need you to teach another class. I said, what is it? It's a communications, reading communications class. So in this particular class that I teach, is 30 people in there. And I am the only American in there. So I teach, this is a reading class. So I teach a prison class, I teach a reading class and a communications. And what's striking about that class is that I'm the only American in this class. I teach students from Mexico, the Ukraine, Russia, all parts of the world. And they are so focused on making sure that they're communicating properly because English is not their first language. The reason why I bring them up and I want to lift them up is the fact that they're coming in from another country and they immediately came into an atmosphere in which we need to understand how to speak and communicate better, right? So I taught that class. I still teach it now. Then that class led into me teaching Wait Tech's first AI course. We need you to teach AI. Will you do it? I said, well, sure, I'll do it. The average age in that class is from 45 to 65. How
good.
can we learn to use AI? And you're talking about older individuals. Again, they're not native, excuse me, English is not their native language. So I'm instructing them on how to use AI. So I've taken that class. I'm developing that class to a point to where it's not one class, now it's two classes. Knowing that right now, I'm proud to say that was the first AI class that Way Tech has ever taught. So I
Well,
taught that
congratulations
class.
on that.
Thank you. And then highlighting the Halifax Community College while dealing with retention. Yes, there I'm dealing with young men who look like me and you to keep them in college. There was a young man that I met who graduated with his associates in welding, did not have any family support, but there's a grant called the Perkins Grant that we get at Halifax Community College that I work with the provost with Dr. Galvin. We both make sure that that grant is used appropriately so students can get the resources they can, and the tools are infused in the curriculum so they can get the resources and they can graduate. And so this young man did receive his associate's degree, and from what I'm understanding, he's welding for a construction company. Here's a young man that he himself came out of prison, served time for a little bit, did not have his family support, came into Halifax Community College, and he made it through, so he's doing well. And so I'm saying all that to say that the prison led from one thing to another. And it was something that I know that people ordinarily wouldn't have done it, but I did it, and it's really truly been a blessing. And so what I want to tell people is that don't look at those men or individuals any different. They are like me and you. But I tell them all the time, we're one step away from being in here. One wrong decision that we can make. You could be, I don't know, you might leave the bar and have too many things to drink, and you driving down the road and hit somebody, have an accident. You may be there. You making wrong decisions of being around the wrong people, and you wind up in a situation. So for me, that's always in the back of my mind. But number two, understanding who they are and understanding their journeys and caring enough about them to where I want to see their journeys. You know, I tell them, I said, look, I'm not going to be here forever, but you need to get as much as you can while you can through me. And so I know I made an impact for them, and it's been a blessing.
It seems like that fills your cup. I mean, in your journey, you mentioned educational equity. And so when you're designing your programs or you're advocating for your resources, what does that term mean to you, educational equity?
Fairness for everybody. You know, I did my dissertation on African American male retention within HBCUs. And so I interviewed about 20 individuals of why you didn't finish your degree. But a lot of them didn't finish because they didn't understand the resources that they had on campus. They didn't understand the academic journey. They were not focused. But part of that equity is having equal resources for everybody. You know, education is an equal process. At least it should be an equal process for everybody, no matter where you're from, no matter where you are. But right now we're dealing with net neutrality. Believe it or not, everybody doesn't have access, still does not have access to the internet. So they can't learn online. Every high school is not structured the same. So they don't have a peer mentor in that high school. They don't have a guidance counselor in that high school. Everybody doesn't have an uncle or an aunt who went to college, right? And so we have to keep that in mind. Just because you have it doesn't mean that somebody else has the same thing. They don't. And so when we encounter those individuals, we have to recognize who they are, but we also have to recognize where they're trying to get to. The same way that somebody helped us, we need to reach back and help somebody else within that unequity process.
I love that. You're hitting a lot of nice topics and key words, you know, educational equity. It seems that community is really big and important to you in your life. Just by us having our conversation up until this point, you give so much back to different parts of the community. So I'm ascertaining that community is extremely important to you. What does community look like for Chris? Why is that such a drive and focus for you to be a bridge and a worker in community?
Well, the community for me is where I live. For an example, I know everybody on my street. I know everybody behind me on my street. And some people call me the mayor of my neighborhood because everybody knows who I am. They may not know my name, but they know my face. And so where I grew up in Charlotte, the neighborhood that I grew up in, and especially where my mother and my parents grew up in, that's who we are. Everybody knows everybody.
Mm-hmm.
If the family needs something, you pull together, you make it happen. You know, if somebody throwing rocks across the street, you bust it out a window. Not only did you get, and you know what I'm talking about, not only did you get a whipping from your mom and dad, you got a whipping from somebody else.
Sure did.
You know, and where I grew up, you know, the families took care of the kids. And so some of these, and then we took care of one another, and some of us are still friends still to this day. And so community means that, you know, as far as education, you give the students, the kids, the nourishment that you need, the guidance that they need. I think that we have to get out of the space of not knowing one another, right? You know, it's crazy to me that people don't know the person across the street or behind them or to the right or to the left, or you may not know somebody. That's crazy to me. But we live in a society now to where people are so caught up in themselves and in their homes that they're not reaching out to understand who other people are, right? Because you never know when you're going to need somebody. So yeah.
This world is not put here for us to just be isolated.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
We are here for each other. Community is extremely important, but also legacy is important. What did we do and what did we leave behind that helped someone along the way that was not selfish, but selfless? And so when I look at your legacy, what is the legacy? What does Chris want people to say about him? And what did you leave behind?
Wow. You know, my focus, whenever God takes me home.
Yeah.
And if you still around, and if you and Kevin and everybody, all the guys in cycle with my family, friends, I want y'all to say that was an overall good dude. That was an overall good guy.
Yeah.
And then as far as my daughter and my nephews, I want to leave something for them. Right now, I rent out the home that I grew up in Charlotte. I have a property management company overseeing that. One of my other goals is to get more property so I can leave something to my daughter, leave something to my nephews, and leave something to my family. I think that's important. But I'm concentrating right now on being the best husband I can be, being the best father I can be, being the best friend I could be. You know, we just got a Cavapoo, Cooper, he's a year old. Being the best father to him I could be. With that said, give myself grace and peace to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Give myself grace and peace to rebound from it if I make a mistake or to learn, right? And so that's where I am.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, giving yourself grace is difficult for guys like us that are set the bar so high.
Yeah.
And when it's not high enough, we'll keep moving it up. But that's an enormous amount of pressure. And sometimes we do have to give ourselves grace. When I got diagnosed with cancer, I had to learn how to give myself grace. I was hard on myself and I felt like I was a failure, even though I knew I wasn't, because I had so many expectations and demands that I put on my life. And giving yourself grace is important, not just for people like us, but when you make a mistake. You know, God's grace is sufficient. Ain't that what the Bible says? His grace is sufficient.
Absolutely.
That means it's enduring. It's very intentional. And I think sometimes when we make these mistakes in life and we don't give ourselves grace, it can lead us to a very dark place.
Yeah, and you know, I think whenever I went to the gym, I think the last time we were cycling, you know, I was explaining that we can go out on Greenway, or we can have intentions on doing 50 miles. But if we do 40, that's okay. We have to give ourselves grace and understanding that, number one, we got back to the car safely. But number two, in that 40-mile period, it was a journey and it was enjoyment. So I have to give myself grace that we didn't make it to 50, and that's okay. We did the best we could within that space. And what does that mean? Well, in life, this thing called life, if you live it long enough, you're going to make mistakes. Thus giving grace for the mistakes you made in the past that you can't change. But giving yourself grace and understanding that this is where I am. I'm trying to get here. I'm on a journey to get here. But if I make that mistake again, not the same one, but a different one.
Yep.
Give yourself grace. Don't beat your head up about it. Land back on your feet.
I remember the last time you and I rode and we were there and you was like, well, what we gonna do, boss? I was like, I don't know. We just gonna ride. I was like, I don't have no map. We just gonna ride.
We just gonna ride.
Like, okay, we're just gonna ride. And I remember, I don't know at what mile we were at. And you looked at me again. You was like, how you feeling?
Yeah.
I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know how I'm feeling. You said, well, you know what? It's okay. Let's have grace. And you said, we ain't got to keep going. Let's go back. And I was like, okay. But you know, the old Tony wouldn't have did that. Let's keep going. I'm going to keep going. But, you know, it's funny that you said that because you were one of the ones that always, since, you know, when we do link up and things, you remind me that teacher, you know, he called me the teacher, the professor.
The teacher. That's right. The teacher.
Tony, you got to give yourself grace. You always remind me of that. You don't have to prove anything. Let's just ride, you know, and I appreciate that and that life lesson because we're forever learners. The lessons that you taught me to remind myself to always give myself grace. Hey, you want to do a quick rapid fire?
My brother, go ahead. Let's do it.
Morning person or night owl?
You know, it's funny when my wife saw that when I was going over a question, she was like, nah, you're not a morning person. I'm a night owl.
You're a night owl?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, you know, I tend to do my thinking at night. Mm-hmm. Or I'm watching news. I'm reading something. I have to give them 8 hours of rest. If I wake up, if I don't get my rest, I'm crabby.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am very crabby, but I'm more of a night owl. Sometimes I'm waking up, drinking some water, getting my midnight snack or whatever. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I might be upstairs playing pool. It just depends on what I feel like doing. I might be listening to some music, but definitely a night owl.
I think I'm a night owl too, man. I do my best work at night. It's just like when everything slows down for me.
Yes.
You know, so I concur. Night owl. Book that has impacted your leadership the most that you have read?
I've read a lot of books on leadership. I don't have one book particular, but I will tell you, I've listened to different pastors like Stephen Furtick. I listen to him all the time. And there's bits and pieces about leadership that is sprinkled through his sermons. And I listen to him quite often. Actually, the Bible talks about leadership. As a matter of fact, right now, I'm building a curriculum. And I just did a leadership course at Wake Tech on ethics and leadership. Mm-hmm. And so I listen to Stephen Furtick a lot. And I do that because that's a quick, you can get on YouTube and Stephen Furtick, boom, he's there. Okay. But I like what he talks about. I like what he does. So absolutely.
One class that you believe every college student should have to take, no matter what their major.
I would say communications, especially right now. Yeah, communications. You got to learn how to communicate and understand one's culture. That's everybody. Communications.
A habit that keeps you grounded during stressful situations.
Cycling and prayer. Cycling, you know, we can, and we do something that the average person can't do, you know, which is a beautiful thing. But cycling, whatever that stressful environment, you can go ride 20 miles and think, and it's calm. And you can come back and you're a whole different person, you know, and in that space, you're praying, you're thinking. And
it's
you come
music.
back, you're a totally different person.
Cycling is music, right? Your heart is pumping, your breath is rhythmic, the chain is clacking, the wheel is humming, the wind is whizzing. It is like making music to your soul.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I agree. Most underrated role on a college campus.
There's no doubt an admissions counselor. Admissions out. And when I would say that because I started off when I got into higher education. I think that anybody that goes into higher education needs to recruit because we get on the road They call us road runners. We get on the road. And at one point in time, and I loved it. This is why I love higher education and love recruiting so much. I could be in one state on Monday. I could be in another state on Wednesday. I'm recruiting. I'm talking to students. I'm engaging students. I'm meeting all kinds of people. Thursday, I can be a different place. And then voila, all of a sudden they show up on your campus. And they'll say, you may not remember them, but they remember you. I remember you. You were down in Texas and you said this and that and the other. Or, you go into a college fair and you got 2 minutes to speak and it's 3,000 students in front of you. They give you the microphone. Boom. As a matter of fact, I was so good at speaking with people that nobody wanted to come in behind me because they knew I was going to say something that was going to be impactful. And so I think the recruiter, though, because they do so much work, because the college is on their shoulders, right, to meet enrollment, they're the most underrated person. Absolutely.
You do a lot of work in the prison system. What is one thing about incarcerated individuals that the public misunderstands?
That they're regretful and sincere about their actions. And I say that because it took me a while to get comfortable with these men. Because again, I took a class, it was 7 people. Out of the 7, 5 had graduated. So now I'm at 13 people. And so I'm in a space now. I want to paint a picture for you. I'm not in there with them by myself. So I have a security guard and I have a social worker with me. So I'm not in there by myself, but I've asked all of them, what did you do? They told me verbatim what they did. All 13 are remorseful except for one individual. He swears, I didn't do it. Well, they found the gun in your car. You were there at the scene of the crime. What do you mean you didn't do it? Everybody else is very remorseful. They tell you verbatim what they did, and they tell you how much regret they have doing what they did. One young man, he told me, he said that, I was high, driving down the road, fell asleep at the wheel, ran into a tree. The person beside me, was killed. I regret that I did this. And to hear that pain and hear it in their voices, they're very remorseful, and they strive every day to do better, and don't hold it against them because we all make mistakes.
Sometimes we look at, we, like you said, we all are one bad mistake away from that. But it's the loss in humanity that is difficult to come to grips with, because we don't embrace inhumane acts from people and still look at them with a humanity lens, right?
Absolutely.
We look at them as being some type of creature or a violator or no use to society. But if you care about humanity and you care about the Jesus that you hear about and read about, and the compassion, all these things that we have talked about in this conversation, then you wouldn't look at them in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A quote or mantra that you're living by right now
is one simple. Malcolm X says, by all means necessary. By all means necessary. That means within ethics. That means that, you make a living by all means necessary. You get your education by all means necessary. You're successful by all means necessary. Don't let it stop you. Don't let anything stop you from being successful, whatever that success is in your mind. So by all means, it's very simple. I tell people that all the time. I say, by all means necessary.
I love that. I call it, what do I say? Full gas, full throttle.
That's right. And
in 2026 is no brakes.
That's right. By all means necessary. I ain't even got to
brake in the car.
That's right.
Foot to the pedal.
That's right.
What or who fills your cup? I know all the things that you're doing, and that is helping fill your cup. But is there anything else that fills your cup?
Yeah, I'm just saying, man, just being around people who I love, that love me back, that I respect. best friends, right now, just being with people such as yourself, Kevin, all these people that I've known for years now, being in that space with you guys, being in the space of my family. It may sound simplistic, but that's where I am now, being around people that I'm comfortable with. We saying good things to one another.
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful thing. I'm talking about lifelong friends, man. I'm talking about friends that we've been together through ups and downs. So absolutely. And now my wife, my daughter, seeing her transition, from one space to another, that fills my cup. Traveling with her. I remember the first time we hopped on a plane with my daughter, we fly to Texas, and her eyes got big. And now her and her friends travel everywhere. But it's just, I enjoy being with her and my wife and going to places. And I just love being around my friends. Absolutely.
It's the simple things, man. You're not promised life. You don't know how long you're going to be here. And that used to be cliche-ish, but it is so true. You don't know how much time you have here. Take it from me with being in the situation in the fight that I'm in, I asked for the little small wins.
Absolutely.
My son started high school when COVID was rampant. So he was that first high school class that didn't go to school.
Yeah. My daughter was too. Yeah.
And then I asked God to let me see him graduate high school, and that happened. I asked God to let me see him graduate college.
Good.
He's finishing the first one off in the spring, and then the second one he will get in agricultural biological engineering. And God is allowing me to see all of this unfold. And so those are the things that fill my cup.
Yes. By all means necessary. Yeah.
All means necessary. So we're coming down to the close, but any person that feels like the odds are stacked against them, feel like they don't have any other options, what's the word that you leave for them?
I will say the words that I will leave is have grit, determination, and prayer. Sometimes in life we get down, and I know you went through your journey through cancer, but sometimes you feel like you're back against the wall. There's always an opening. That's the deception of the devil to make it seem like there's no options out, no way out. And it causes you to do things that are uncharacteristic. So I would say prayer and grit and determination. Stick by those words and you'll make it out. And patience. You have to be patient. As humans, we want things when we want them, right? But the reality is, if God was to give us those things, we couldn't handle them at the point that we're at. So we have to be patient and understanding that the journey that we're on is ultimately for our good. And so those are the words that I would give to people who may be down and out, right? I have empathy and sympathy for those individuals because I was there at one point in time. And so that is a difficult space to be in. But those are the words that I would like to leave that individual because I know that somebody may be feeling that way. And that is a difficult space to navigate through, right? And so those are the words that I would like to leave for them and hold on to those words.
Pathways to Possibilities with Dr. Christopher J. Withers. You guys heard it here first. If you are a parent or a grandparent or an individual that wants to pursue higher education or just do something better, Chris is here. He's a resource for you.
Absolutely.
Dr. Withers, how can people find you? What's your handles?
So my email address is CJ Withers. That's CJWITHERS, the number 3 at gmail.com.
All right. You heard it here. If you are looking forward to hearing more, you can tune in to Eagles Don't Quack on 103.5 FM, 1520 AM, WARRadio.com. We would love for you to listen and subscribe. Dr. Withers, man, it was a pleasure. I look forward to part 2 of this conversation.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being here with us today.
Hey, God bless you. I love you, brother. Let's do it again.
Thank you so much.